everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of VENDO Velocity. If you haven't tuned in to VENDO Velocity in the past, VENDO Velocity is VENDO's weekly podcast in which we go live and talk about all things Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and TikTok Shop. So today I'm joined by a very special guest who has never been on the live VENDO Velocity podcast with me before, but I actually go way back with in terms of we used to work at Walmart together. So Sophie Brown, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little bit of background as far as your history before VENDO, as well as what you currently manage today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Delaney, for having me. Great to be here. Like Delaney said, we go way back out of college. We both started at Walmart.com, or it may have been Jet.com back then, we were category specialists, so managing a very small piece of the business. We were both on the health, beauty, and wellness side. I was doing plant-based protein powder. With Walmart's reorg a couple of years back, I took a role as an associate merchant for both stores and .com. So I was managing the performance nutrition category, so protein powders, pre and post workouts, shakes and bars, before coming to VENDO. So I've been at VENDO now for about 2.5 years, where I help the team sort of facilitate and bridge the gap between stores and .com, coming up with new strategies and tactics to drive traffic to both channels and driving traffic from stores to .com and then .com to stores. And then working with account managers to sort of just brainstorm that strategy and think about what it looks like long-term and short-term.
Absolutely. So we're very excited to have Sophie on the podcast today, mainly because as she had just laid out for you, and she won't put it in this way, but I will, she is one of the experts in our space as far as omni-channel management. So specifically today, we're going to be diving a little bit into Walmart Luminate, which, of course, once it was released, just got a lot of talk going within the industry as far as what is Luminate, how can I leverage it, and really what are the key benefits in reporting that I now have access to that maybe I didn't before. So going to be diving into some of those hard-hitting questions, and Sophie, as the expert, is going to be speaking on that. So Sophie, if you could go ahead and just kick us off on what is Walmart Luminate?
Yeah, definitely. So Luminate is Walmart's new reporting system. It came out last year. It's for both suppliers and merchants to use. So it's actually going to be completely replacing the current platform called DSS, or Decision Support System, which is in Retail Link. So it's going to provide all of the sales and inventory data that it currently exists in DSS. And then depending on if the supplier pays for charter or if they just have basic, they may have access to more like in-depth omni-channel sales, category data, and customer shopping insights.
Perfect. So as far as DSS, I know a lot of the longtime Walmart folks have been using that for quite a while now. When will it be completely removed? I know you spoke to the fact that it will be removed. Is that going to happen in the near term, or have they not really announced the date there?
Yeah, it definitely will be an end of an era. The date does keep getting pushed back. First it was December, then it was March. And so now it's supposed to be Q2. So by the beginning of Q2, DSS is supposed to be completely going away. You'll be able to access Luminate through Retail Link, but if there's any types of reports and things that you want to get in DSS, you got to get them now, because after that, you won't have access to anything. Luminate will have some historical data available. I think it's going back about 2 years, but there are some specific reports in DSS, like a tender analysis, for example, that you won't have access to in Luminate.
Got it. And can you just give our audience a bit of a background as far as how is that tender analysis being utilized today? And are you saying then that there's no function within Luminate, either basic or charter, that will replace that tender analysis, or will there be some functionality that will take its place?
Definitely. I think we'll get a little into OPD and what that means and all of that later on. But basically, in DSS today, there's really no way of breaking out what OPD is, or online pickup and delivery. So historically, it's this online grocery channel. It used to be 2 separate apps. You had your Walmart, regular app, and then you had your Walmart grocery app or website. We never had a way of pulling out what those sales looked like. Tender analysis helps us understand or sort of back into a percentage or number that we can attribute to pickup and delivery. I wouldn't say it's 100% accurate. We've seen it a couple basis points or percentage points off, but we use it to kind of just look at trends to see how that channel grows over time. So we know if it was at 5% and then 8%, maybe it grew 3 percentage points. We don't necessarily say it makes up 8% of sales.
Got it.
And to answer your second part of the question, depending on if you have basic or charter, you could have access to those pickup and delivery metrics. So within charter, you will see a breakout. In basic, you will not. So something that our team has been doing over the last couple of months is sort of just harvesting the data. So trying to get as much of that tender analysis data pulled as possible so that when DSS does go away, we'll have access to sort of just benchmarks and to understand where we were before the change was made.
That's awesome. So let's talk about DSS a little bit for those that are a little bit apprehensive about the full change to Luminate. Will the data in Luminate be faster than DSS? Is it more comprehensive overall? How does it compare?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say over the last 6 to 12 months, especially when it comes to .com reporting, there's been a ton of data inaccuracies in DSS. It could be because just the shift from DSS to Luminate. It could be a whole, a bunch of other issues and problems. We've also seen sometimes the stores and .com reports counting different channels more than once, like ship from store, pick up today. But we'll pull .com reporting one day, and then the next day the numbers will be completely different for that same time frame. So it's not really sort of like a trusted source. What Luminate will do is sort of just provide a more accurate and streamlined reporting method. And it will be Walmart's source of truth because both suppliers and merchants will be using it. In the past, merchants have their own system called Flight Deck where they use to pull all of their sales, inventory, everything, while suppliers are using DSS. And so the data sources are completely different. So you won't match up dollar to dollar, but with both merchants and suppliers using Luminate, you'll be able to actually have meaningful conversations when you're looking at the same data.
Flight Deck takes me back to the good old days.
No.
Log in at Walmart.com, sit down at your desk, open up Flight Deck, see how the business is performing. What a time. Very cool, though. That's great to know that Walmart merchants will now be on the same page as suppliers, because I think that's been a gap that needed to be closed for quite some time now, in which everyone was looking at different systems for a source of truth. So that in itself is very encouraging. But Sophie, speak a little bit about in Luminate, what are the different modules that are available? And how does data availability differ across both charter and basic?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So within Luminate, there are 3 modules or apps. You'll have shopper behavior, customer perception, and channel performance. Shopper behavior and customer perception are only available in charter. And then what you'll have access to in channel performance will differ between charter and basic. I'll start with shopper behavior. So this is the module that I probably spent the most time exploring. It is very new. It's kind of like one of a kind. It basically allows us to analyze customer shopping habits across different channels, stores, and even competitors in the category. So it really helps suppliers make, data-driven decisions across different business functions. So obviously you have merchandising, but also think about marketing and product development. And then you're also able to really just benchmark your performance, both in stores and online, against competitors, and then just like your overall category. So for example, you'll be able to see if you're over, under the category average for digital penetration, and it will give suppliers just a goal to actually work towards, because historically merchants haven't been allowed to share or provide us with that category average for digital penetration.
Wow, that's great. Yes, I know previously as well. I mean, you spoke a little bit about the tender analysis and that being able to gauge a little bit in terms of that digital penetration, but now having that transparency will be huge. So
exactly. And
awesome.
Then just being able to compare against competitors that are like yours, if you're like a premium brand or just like an opening price point brand, it's really great. And then It's recently introduced some new features when it comes to like demographics, for example, being able to pull how the demographics of your customer base change from stores to .com. Awesome. The next module is customer perception. This basically uses customer surveys to provide insights into what customers think about your brands or products, or even like your competitors in the space. So it will be extremely useful for, I don't know, like testing new ideas, packaging, pricing, or even like a new marketing message. It's probably the module I spent the least amount of time in, but it is super beneficial. And like I said, shopper behavior and customer perception are only available if you're paying for Charter.
Got it. These the customer perception surveys, these are Walmart customers, or how are they getting that data?
So Walmart has access to all of their customers' information. Obviously, they have like their credit card information, everything. And so they'll help you even come up with like the templates, the type of questions, and be able to pull together sort of a targeted customer base to ask these types of questions too.
So the suppliers have full control over the questions that are being asked?
Yes, they have full control over it. And then if they're like, oh, I don't even know where to start, Walmart will help them develop, sort of kind of like provide like topics and just like some starting points for them.
Oh, very cool. Okay. And then what was the third?
So the third is channel performance, and that's probably the big focus for us. It'll be important to understand like what data is available, how to use it, and then how it actually differs from DSS, because this is what's essentially replacing DSS. So it'll be where suppliers go for sales reporting and inventory tracking. If you want to pull up that table, it helps us visualize the differences between what we'll see in DSS versus basic versus Charter. So essentially, when you are in channel performance, you'll see two different fields. You'll see order channel, and that is, where the customer is making the purchase, whether that's stores or online or e-com. And then you'll see service channel, and that refers to how the order or purchase is like being fulfilled. Within e-com, it's broken out into two buckets. So you have the fulfilled by store. So this is delivery, pickup, and ship from store. All the inventory is coming from stores. And then you have fulfilled by FC or supplier. So supplier means if it's a DSV. And that just includes ship to home and ship to store. Ship to store has sort of been decommissioned. You won't see it in your sales today, but if you pull some historical sales from a few years ago, you might see it pop up. That's why I included it, but you won't see it in your reporting today. Fulfilled by store is probably, you'll probably gain the most insight from these channels because they are the fastest growing. They make up the biggest portion of your e-com sales. We know that delivery and pickup make up about, I think it's like 20% of total Walmart sales. That will range based on the category you're in. Sometimes it will be 30 to 40%. Other times it could be 5 to 10%. But it's growing like exponentially. And then you have ship from store, which is also a really fast growing channel. Basically, when a customer chooses to get an item shipped to them, they don't necessarily know where the inventory is coming from. With ship to home, again, it's coming from that .com FC. With ship from store, it's coming from a store, but the customer doesn't know. So they'll place an order, and then Walmart will decide where they want the inventory coming from based on profitability. They've been able to leverage their store network and basically use the stores as mini fulfillment centers. And obviously is super profitable with over 4,000 stores and only about like 6 to 8 .com FCs. Typically, it's more profitable to use a store, depending on where the customer is ordering from and where the inventory is. So we've seen a big shift from ship to home being a big channel. A lot of that volume is going to ship from store. So a lot of times now, ship to home can only make up like a couple percentage points of your total sales. So that's why I say this fulfilled by store bucket is probably where you're going to see the biggest portion of your .com sales.
Which is incredible to see, because I think the misconception right now is that you're going to be basing your advertising spend based off of only two channels, right? The ship to home channel and the ship to store channel. Whereas now what Sophie's trying to elaborate on is elaborating very well on, is you're missing out on a high percentage of your sales. I think you said 20%, Sophie,
yeah.
An average. And for some categories, it's going to be more than that 20%. So that's a huge chunk of sales that if you limit your ad budget too much by only looking at a section of these channels, then you're also limiting your overall growth. This is huge, Sophie.
Exactly. And then the way that the reporting differs across the different platforms, it's crazy. So with DSS right now, when you pull store sales, you pull one number and it's buy in store, delivery, and pickup. You can't, again, pull out that delivery and pickup number unless you use what we spoke about earlier, that tender analysis report. And again, not super accurate. When you pull .com sales in DSS, you are able to see a breakout from ship from store and ship to home. And you're really able to see that shift from ship to home to ship from store and how that's changed over time. When you get into Luminate Basic, reporting changes because they begin to report on where, like, the sales are based on where the inventory is coming from. So you're again seeing this one lump sum number when you pull stores, but now that stores number is also including ship from store, which could be a big channel for a lot of brands, especially brands that are distributed across the entire nation. So when you pull store sales, you're now only seeing ship to home. And like I said, it could only be a couple percentage points of your total sales. So when you think about, like you said, advertising, brands could be really hesitant to invest more when they're only seeing such a small number be attributed to .com.
That's huge. And then,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to hit on the last platform, Charter. This is obviously going to be the most beneficial when it comes to .com reporting because all service channels are broken out. So this is the first time you'll accurately get to see your digital penetration number that includes all of these channels that were or the orders were initiated online. So you see this big number that includes delivery, pickup, ship from store, ship to home, and ship to store. And each number is broken out. So you can see which specific channel is driving sales and driving growth.
Got it. That's awesome. And then can you speak a little bit about how readily available and built out these reports already are? Like when you think of DSS, right, you are manually configuring a lot of those reports. You're saving them, you're scheduling them to run on a week-to-week basis once you've built that format and a template. Is it similar here, or are these readily available where it's like a click of a button, here is this exact report that all brands and suppliers have access to?
Yeah, definitely. If you want, you can stop sharing the chart, but it varies based on Charter or Basic. But in Basic, you will get sort of these like pre-established templates. So if you want to put like a .com sales report, it will recommend which metrics and fields and attributes to use, but then you can customize it from there and then select specific things you want to include and which ones you don't want to include. In Charter, it's much more built out. They have a ton of recommended reports that you can pull. And again, you can edit them from there, but in Charter, there's just a lot more pre-built out templates. The reports run pretty quickly, so you can schedule them to be emailed to you to run on a everyday basis. But if I were to go in right now and to pull a report, it would only take a couple minutes to load. Within shopper behavior, it's a little bit different. That takes a couple hours to load because the data source is just much bigger. But within channel performance, you're getting reports within a couple minutes. And similarly, like they come out in this Excel with all of your fields and attributes at the top and everything. And then from there, you can sort of just pivot it and analyze it how you want.
Got it. That's awesome. And then you spoke about the 3 modules. One thing we haven't touched on too much yet is PO tracking. And I think on the supplier side, understanding how many POs your brand is getting on a weekly basis is a very important metric because that's obviously dependent on how you're getting paid as a brand and your overall profitability. So if I recall correctly, we were using a tool called, I want to say Nova before. Is that still being utilized or is that also going away? And does Luminate have the functionality to look at POs?
Yeah, so Nova still exists and it will continue to exist. And that's where you'll go in and actually see like the order numbers, what's in the order and where the inventory is going and everything like that. So you're still using Nova, especially if you have Basic, just to track orders and when the orders are coming in, when they're due, everything like that. What Luminate will provide in Basic, at least, and what DSS did provide is sort of this inventory tracking. So understanding how many units are on order, how many units you have on hand, where the inventory is, and like which FCs, and that kind of stuff. With Charter, though, you are able to see sort of like end to end, where the inventory is, when it's going to be where. You see when the order is placed, when you're shipping the inventory, when it's hitting the DCs, when it's hitting the stores. So it's obviously a lot more in depth, and there's a handful of dashboards where you can kind of track by item, like just sort of all those inventory and PO metrics. But again, you are still using Nova.
Geez, I wonder what Charter is really missing. Maybe we'll touch on that in a bit. But that's awesome. Okay. And then in terms of the market research data, as far as Amazon goes, typically we'll use tools like Helium 10, but Amazon Seller Central, Vendor Central have tools built out like Brand Analytics, Product Opportunity Explorer, so that you can see how brands are trending within a given category. Can you elaborate on how granular some of the data is specifically from a competitive standpoint? What sorts of insights can you glean on your competitors?
Yeah. So within the shopper behavior tool, that's really the only tool you're going to get like their total category data, where you can see different brands and suppliers and whatnot, and items and subcategories and everything. And so it gets pretty granular. There's a handful of different reports and dashboards that you can build out. You can see it like all the way to the item level. For basically, you'll be assigned like specific categories that you fall in, and then any item that falls within that category, you'll be able to see data about it, sales, customer data, demographics, basically everything you want to see that you can see for your own brands and shopper behavior, you can see about your competitors in your category. When it comes to some of that stuff we see in Helium 10, like search data, we can't see that yet in Luminate. I've read a few articles and things saying that is coming, but it isn't there yet. So I wouldn't say it's like a one-stop shop. Like we'll still have to use some supplemental reporting, even if you have Charter, especially when it comes to the .com side of the business, to pull some of those like online metrics and customer behavior data.
Got it. Well, that answered my question from earlier, so thank you. As far as getting invited to Luminate, is that an invitation, or is it more of any supplier can sign up? What does that look like?
So right now, every supplier has access to Luminate Basic. Over the last 6 months, every supplier should have received an invitation to Luminate Basic. And so you can log in similar to how you log into Retail Link. With Charter, it is invitation based. And so when you decide you obviously there's a whole, overview, a bunch of meetings that go into it, because it does cost a lot of money. It's based on a percentage of annual sales. So the fee will vary based on, the size of your brand, but it is a percentage of sales. So when you are working in Charter or you agree to it, then you're given a day-to-day contact and a sort of like an account manager that can help you build out reports. And when you first sign up, there's so many trainings that you go through for Charter where they help you build out sort of standard reports and templates. And then from there, anytime you have questions, if it's ad hoc or you can have weekly meetings, whatever it is, they'll kind of be that person for you. But yeah, everyone should have access to it. And then if you want to upgrade from basic to Charter, there's a handful of different resources and things on the Luminate website that you can sort of just initiate those conversations.
So a few questions on that. You spoke particularly about a percentage of sales for Charter. Is that percentage of sales consistent across all brands? Or because I think very quickly about Amazon vendor negotiations and how for some brands, if you want to be charged for like A+ premium content or Amazon's vendor services, it's like 1%, 0.5%, 2%. Like it does vary, and it doesn't seem like there's as much structure there, or even like a set rate. Is there a set rate for Charter?
I don't think they've said it's 1 or 2% of sales. I do think it varies a little bit, but I think that there is a little bit more structure. I don't necessarily think it's like a negotiation because you're not really working with the merchant team. It's a separate team that manages this. But I do think there are ways for that percentage to differ across different brands and different categories.
Got it. And then are the account managers that you were talking about that get assigned to the business, are those category specific, or how do they match account managers with specific brands?
I'm actually not sure how they do that. We have only a few brands signed up. Each brand has a different account manager. I think that they do have some sort of category knowledge because they will help you build out reports and then analyze them from there. And so they'll be able to see sort of what's going on with other brands and other suppliers in your space, and if they're seeing similar trends and things, and then provide more data and details from there.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then going back to one of your earlier points about how Walmart merchants are using Luminate, and this allows Walmart merchants and suppliers to be on the same page, how do you recommend approaching merchants about some of the data and insights that you're seeing within Luminate? Is that an active discussion on line reviews or any other calls you're having with them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge thing, especially for line reviews. With Charter and the shopper behavior tool, you obviously have access to what your competitors are doing, how the category is doing, and you can sort of just benchmark yourself against that. And so there's a ton of reports that are built out and that you can build out yourself that you'll 100% include in line reviews on a day-to-day basis. From a .com perspective, at least, I was talking to a merchant a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about bundling on site, and there's something called soft bundles. So when you're on a product display page and you're at the bottom of the page and you see like frequently bought together, those recommendations, those are called soft bundles. And so there's a report in Luminate shopper behavior that you can see what items are bought together in the same basket. So using that report, we can recommend to the merchants which items to bundle together. And when I was talking to him about that, he's like, that's exactly how we do it. Like, we use that report too. So it's just nice to know that you're sort of on the same like level and playing field, and that you're both using the same types of reports. You have access to the same types of data. And so you can actually have more like meaningful, engaging conversations because you know that they're seeing exactly what you're seeing.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And then my very last question, just want to know your take, Sophie, on which brand would be the best fit for Charter. Is there like a specific revenue threshold that you'd recommend? Oh, this makes sense. Or is there really, I obviously know that it's brand dependent, but what sorts of things should suppliers be thinking about when they're trying to decide if Charter makes sense for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a really big investment. Obviously, for big CPGs, I think investing in Charter is essential in order for them to stay competitive and then have meaningful conversations with not only their merchants, but also their leadership teams, because they'll just obviously gain a ton of insight into the category, sort of be those category leaders and help, merchants and, again, the leadership team make thoughtful decisions. I think for other brands, from a .com perspective, obviously the key difference is the access to those pickup and delivery sales and metrics. So if those channels aren't meaningful to your business, then that's something to consider. So if you're maybe a brand in like general merchandising or grocery, and just pickup and delivery isn't huge for you, like maybe you don't need that. From a store's perspective, though, the access you do get to that category and customer insights, it could be extremely impactful. I will say that this is only the beginning of Luminate, and it's going to continue to evolve, and we'll get new reports and different insights. So it's not something that you necessarily need to invest in now, but maybe down the line they'll come out with something groundbreaking like search data. And if that's really important to you, then you can reassess sort of, or even reconsider if it's worth making that investment into Charter. But for now, I think basic is okay. You're still getting everything you had in DSS. From a store's perspective, at least. When you want to sort of level up and be able to be those thought leaders in the space, I think thinking about that data you have access to in shopper behavior and even that customer perception tool, it can be really, really impactful and meaningful to your business.
Those are all great points. I don't think that I can continue any further after that one or follow up, Sophie. So really appreciate you coming on. Again, if anyone has questions, you can reach out to Sophie directly. Sophie, can you let our audience know where they can find you?
You can send me an email. It's just sophie@vendocommerce.com.
Perfect. There we go. Well, let's flood her inbox, everyone. I'm sure you all have some great questions coming out of this, but hopefully this allowed us to go through comprehensively the key benefits of Walmart Luminate and how you can be leveraging it on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for tuning in to Velocity, and we'll catch you next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.